And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. Tomato Talk, top of mind, advancing through obstacles. So, we're going to talk about probably an interesting obstacle that perhaps we all face at different times. And that is going to be advice. Yes, that wonderful word of advice. Where do we get it from? How do we get it? Who do we get it from? Can it come in the form of a book, a speech, or is it just personal contact? These are a lot of questions. What are the answers? I don't want to say it depends, but you got to really pay attention to this thing and actually see how things are done and then get a better understanding of where that may be. So, again, welcome to Tomato Talk, advancing through obstacles. So, the obstacle is, where do we get advice from? Let's just go with a couple of different aspects of this whole thing, and then we're going to get into into that book. Does it need to come from personal, or can it actually come from a book? So, advice. When you go out there searching for advice, you got to understand the other person's point of view. Where is that coming from? And this is going to filter through the whole way through, whether it's personal, whether it's coming from a speaker, whether it's coming from a book. The question is, how is it being delivered, and what is the purpose of it being delivered? So it's get advice. You go speak to family. Should you get advice from family? I got big time mixed emotions on that one. Big time mixed emotions. And it all comes from the good part of a family. What do you want to do with your family? You want to protect them, right? You want to make sure that they're not hurt. Good, not so good. It's like, where do we grow? Don't we grow from obstacles? I mean, obviously, I believe in that. We grow by overcoming obstacles, but sometimes our best lesson comes from when we fail. It's a four-letter word, fail. Or we could stretch it out, because I said that once in front of in a group of people. It's like, oh yeah, I failed at it. It's like, bam, got smacked in the back of the head. Yosemite over there, he wasn't the guy that smacked me in the back of the head, but I got smacked in the back of the head. It's like, you didn't fail. You didn't fail. You learned. I'm like, okay, you're right. I did learn. So let's call it not a failure, but they're protecting you from a less than desired outcome. Less than desired outcome. A lot more letters than four. You can go add them up as to how many they are. But a less than desired outcome. Good afternoon, Doug. Always a pleasure. So when your family member tells you or gives you advice on something, are they being overprotective, or are they giving you real advice? Are they allowing you to come to the conclusion as to whether or not it's something that makes sense, doesn't make sense for you, not for the protection of you, but for the growth of you? Hmm. Now there is that one. Friends go get a little bit grayer as that one goes. I know, Doug, if I ask you anything, I'm getting a straight up response, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, but to go and do. And other friends, and friends come from different places too, don't they? Some of them are very childhood friends, always want to see you do well and stuff like that. Maybe that childhood friend is a business person and understands the fact that we do need to grow, we do need to take chances, we do need to take calculated risks. Now, does it make sense to do that? Yeah, absolutely does. I mean, you got to think about, again, where they're coming from, but what that downside is. And maybe it's what's the downside to that relationship, too. So, my wife gives me bad advice. Again, I'm looking at things from a growth standpoint. Maybe it's a little different, but you got to think about that from your spouse. And then, if you're the one giving advice, that does make it tricky, right? Now, think about it that way. You might be able to take any kind of a comment that's good or bad, good advice, bad advice, that kind of thing. But what if you were to guide your spouse and guide that person in a wrong direction, and then risk the fact that they hold you responsible for giving them bad advice? Well, see what I mean? It does make it quite a bit of a challenge when you're working in that kind of a relationship. Business relationship, totally different. should be totally different. If you have a business partner, the two are going to hash it out. You're going to go back and forth, but you now know that it's coming from a pure business perspective, and both of you have got that skin in the game. Both of you understand that there are risk and reward, and there are certain things to make that you would risk where it makes sense and not make sense. Look, it's a monetary thing. Can you invest 5 grand, 10 grand, 100 grand in an idea that may and may not work? Depends upon your finances, revenue stream, all the rest of that kind of stuff. Obviously, it does. If it's a personal thing, well, are you risking harm to yourself? Are you going to get hurt by doing something? Well, there's a question for you too. I know personally, it takes me a little longer to recover from mistakes, so I tend to be a little bit more, either a little bit more conservative in doing something or putting more time, energy, and effort into the preparation to do something. But however you want to decide and take a look at that, definitely more conservative, without a doubt. Definitely more conservative as we go through things. But that physical thing, that becomes that's a personal decision as that goes, unless of course your career is dependent upon some physical aspect of it, the whole way through. So there's a factor that gets tossed into that equation. And there always is outside factors that get tossed into everything. So understanding where that personal conversation comes from, but they all can be a mentor. They certainly can, depending upon their level of experience. If it's a spouse just want to see you succeed, that's not really a mentor. That's just advice. That's just information coming from someplace. A business partner, a friend that's been there, done that, maybe a friend that's been there and didn't do that. In other words, they've made mistakes along the way. Boy, wouldn't that be interesting to hear from them about what mistakes they made, so perhaps you don't have to repeat them. I'll go back to the Toastmaster example I gave the other day too. By doing that conference, I did not want to see the next person make the same mistakes that I made. This way, it saves them time. So shared them. Did that whole thing. So I was clear about what the objective of the conference was and the importance level of that. Which was getting people there that can make decisions, because there's a business meeting involved and we need that quorum for the business meeting. So kind of first and foremost, need that quorum. And then everything else goes along. Now, again, I don't know, this could be a chicken or the egg thing that goes along with it. Do you get everybody there to do the business meeting because of the business meeting? Or do you get everybody to want to attend and they attend because of the content? It's always a mix as that goes. We had it worked out. But it should be understood by the next person. So that 1 or 2 months that I didn't know in advance, they now know perfectly fine. So those things that your business partner or friend that is in business, or friend that has experienced or worked through some of those things that you are looking to do, getting advice from them is different than just getting protective advice. Now they are falling much more into that mentor role. Now, here's another one for you, too. All right. What about a public presentation? And here's where it becomes a little bit more interesting. So a mentor, is a mentor a one-on-one conversation, or can a mentor be given by somebody in more of a group setting? Which also falls into what we're talking about here with the book. All right. Now, a speaker. Professional speaker, someone standing up in front of the room or on Zoom, giving a presentation. Now, when they're speaking to the group, are they speaking to the group or are they speaking to you? Think about that one. Are they speaking to the group or are they speaking to you? Darren LaCroix, Toastmaster, National Speakers Association. He won the International Speech Contest. He showed up at one of our meetings and he started giving advice about how to present to the audience. Listened in, talked about body language, stage presence, all the rest of this kind of stuff. But he also spoke about words that are being used. So when he's giving a presentation, when you're listening to a presentation, are they speaking to the group or are they speaking to you? Depends on the words that are being used, right? How many of you? Well, that's speaking to the group. Did you? That's speaking to you. Think about that. When I just said that, did you feel more engaged because I said, did you? Or perhaps a little less engaged when I said, how many of you? Well, if I said, how many of you? It's easy to say, well, not me. If I asked, did you? Now you're going back and kind of maybe thinking about it a little bit longer. And of course, you must pause to allow the person, the audience, to take that in. Now, the speaker one, if the speaker is going to be presenting like that in front of a group, large audience, doesn't make a difference if it's 10 people or 10,000 people. Wouldn't that be fun? They're making that presentation to 10 or 10,000 people. If you feel like that speaker is speaking to you, now all of a sudden you do have the ability, at least, to have that speech fall into the category of being a mentor, for that speaker to be a mentor. Now, granted, it's only one speech, but maybe you're listening to many. Maybe you're listening to their ongoing presentations, webinars, things like that. Where they're speaking to you, or you get that feeling that they're speaking to you and you as a person, not you as an audience. Now, it's really important too, from the speaker's point of view, is that the speaker either really must know that audience, or the speaker needs to invite people that are very appropriate for that topic. So it's really important for you when you attend these things to kind of figure out, has this person really done their homework or not? Now, granted, if they go up there and they're talking in generality terms, that's not a mentor role. If they're speaking more to you about something that's relatable to you, and a good speaker will definitely do that. I'll give you a couple of ways that I've learned from them, as to how to go about that and do that. But here's the difference between those two presentations. I was at a conference. It was a business conference. There was two speakers. And we'll skip the names. We'll skip the names on this one. Two speakers, same meeting, same everything, the rest of that stuff. One person had an unbelievable comeback story. Had gotten injured, was an athlete, had another situation, wound up getting injured, destined to never play again the sport, came back, not only played the sport, but actually excelled at it, winning a championship. Phenomenal story. It was a story. The other person gave lesser of a story that went along with it, had a little bit of humor into the story, but actually gave us things to think about. Now, which speaker do you think was a little bit more impactful? Now, I'll tell you, the first speaker, without knowing the professional speakers and that kind of world, which didn't at the time, knew the name of the first person. And we read both bios. We knew who was speaking. I knew, not personally, but I knew that person from some of the stuff that they've done in the past. So that was an exciting one. Second person, didn't know. Didn't know. And so did I. don't want to mention names. But anyhow, didn't know, and that kind of thing. So my expectation was actually much greater from the first person than it was from the second person. But that first person story, an audience, never was. It was not a mentoring kind of a presentation. It was about them. It was about what they were able to do, what they went through, their early success, their mid challenge, and then their ultimate success. But it wasn't relatable. I'm not I'm not an athlete. None of them were there. It wasn't like we were, a bunch of athletes that they were talking to. Far from it. Very far from it. These were people offering a service. So it could have been translated a little bit more so, where the story tied in every once in a while with teamwork and what we go through and the challenges and all the rest of that kind of stuff. But it wasn't not a mentoring role. The other speaker, without a doubt, all the humor that was in there, were we a funny audience? No, I would venture to say none of us wanted to be comics or anything like that. That wasn't it. Were all of us any way, shape, or form relatable to some of the stories that he told? Probably not. Maybe a few. Some health things that were tossed into the equation there. Maybe a few of us kind of saw that. I actually did. But that wasn't it. It was that person speaking to us, translated back to us. So in that case, that was a mentoring role. That was a place to get mentored from a good speaker, a good professional speaker, a good presentation. Yes, that certainly can fall into a category where you can receive some level of mentorship that goes along with it. And then you can continue on. Obviously, a good mentoring role would be something that continues on. But now here was the other one too. And this one took a slightly different tack than even the speaker, because the speaker did not come from our industry, came from another total different scenario, but made it relatable to us that was sitting in the audience over there. Now, what if you were to write a book? Can you be mentored by a book? This came up in conversation, something I was reading this morning. I was reading a book, and the book actually posed that question. Can a book be a mentor? Can a book actually speak to you as an individual, not speak to the audience as a whole? And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm reading a book that's questioning whether or not a book is worth its greatest salt. Or is it just entertainment or just some knowledge, that you get from it? Not philosophical, not how do you implement kind of thing. And not how do I, not you as a general audience, but how do I take action based upon that book? Hey, look, there's always something to learn from everything. I learned that a long time ago, no matter what it is. But if you're looking for a mentoring role, you're really looking for somebody to be much more proactive in giving advice, proactive in putting thoughts into your head, individual person's head and thought process to go and do something. So reading this book, and the book says, is a book worth it? Can a book actually take on and being a mentor? And that's what the book's purpose was. And I'm thinking, wow, what a great question. Could you imagine if you started off your presentation questioning the fact, letting the audience, each individual person in that audience, come to their conclusion as to whether or not the speech is going to be worth it or not? If you could speak to a person individually or not, try that one next time. I think I just might. I just saw that 3 years ago, I gave a presentation out at Suffolk Community College. And Keith McCarty, if you pop back on again over here, Keith jumped on, yesterday. Thank you for that opportunity. He was one who arranged it. But no, when I was speaking to those students, when I was speaking with those students, it wasn't so much as the me thing. And it's always in my mind whenever I do these things also. Is it just me telling my story, me telling my point of view on something? Or am I phrasing this thing enough where you actually get a chance to think about it from your own perspective, about what it is that's impacting you, how you could take whatever information I spit out or whatever rhetorical question that I pose, that I'm posing in a manner where you're actually able to contemplate it and maybe do something with it, as opposed to just saying whatever it is that I say. Well, when I was speaking with those students, I was really in tune with that. And I will tell you right now, it's a lot easier doing it when I'm sitting there talking to an audience of people. Yeah, not digital people, but people. And even doing this, here I am, I'm looking at a camera, making believe it's a person. And there's different tricks to it, which I don't do, but I've heard that some people put a picture right behind the camera of a person and they just make believe they're talking to that person. It's actually a great idea. Or you could put notes behind it and whatever, which I haven't done that one in a while, but it is different. It's the beautiful part of doing things in a digital format. You can do these little tricks as you're doing that. But there was no trick involved there. The screen I had behind me was, well, it was behind me. So there was no referring to notes. It wasn't like I had a laptop in front of me or anything like that. But those people were there, the students were there, and I was talking with those students, not at those students. I was talking with those students, giving them hopefully different things for them to contemplate and things for them to think about as they listen to some of the other presenters that were there. So I do hope, even though that was a one-shot ordeal, speaking to those students, that they took something from that lasted for a longer term period rather than that time, and that we were not just entertainment, just not just fodder, filling a class, doing that, and we left them with really truly something. I think we did. I absolutely loved the opportunity, and also with the people that also presented alongside me on that one. That was definitely a worthwhile thing. I know I gained a lot. Love doing those things. Doing this one too. But let's get back to it. So what about a book? If you're writing a book, you don't have an audience in front of you. I had an audience in front of me. I didn't have an audience in front of me. If you're writing a book, are you writing a book to entertain? Well, then you don't have to worry about that. You don't really have to worry about the audience, but then again, you kind of do. You need to make sure, if you're looking to make money from the sale of that book, if it's an entertainment book, that you need to make sure that it is interesting enough and appealing enough that there is an audience for it. But generally, you're going to write that book and then find that audience because you're writing from the heart. You're writing a story that you want to tell. When J.K. Rowling wrote her book, I don't think she ever imagined that her audience was going to be basically the entire world. And then even then some with all these spin-offs and everything else that came along with that. I don't know, but if you're writing an entertainment book like that and it's something that you just really want to do, and she really wrote that for kids, that's where that started out. Boy, did that kind of explode in a nice positive manner. And that one continued on. But that's that side of it. Let's go with the mentoring. Was that book anything to do with mentoring? No, it really wasn't. There's always some takeaways with everything, but no, that was not it. That was an entertainment. That was a storybook, a true storybook. If you're writing a book about your knowledge of something, that's a technical book. Now you are writing for an audience, but you're writing technical knowledge. So that's not really mentoring, that's teaching. There is a difference, right? If you're a mentor, if you're a coach, you're not really there in that role to teach. Guide, yes. Help them learn from your experiences, yes. It depends on how involved you are. But if you're guiding somebody, if you're mentoring, you're probably, and I'll go back to the example I had over there, you're probably looking to just make sure the person keeps coming up with ideas and always makes headway and learns as they're going through. So I had a mentor when I did that conference, and that person, I actually had a conversation with that person after my 2-month little, is that what we're really trying to do? And then he said, yes. The business meeting really is a big part of it. It's not that it's the only thing, but it's a big part of it. He said, but he didn't want me to, it's not that he hid it from me, but he wanted me to learn about it when it was time for me to learn about it. So in hindsight, I think that was a good move because I was super excited about the whole process and getting this thing together and things like that. If I went into this thing knowing that business meeting was number one, it was a meeting, I don't know if I would have had the same enthusiasm. So he allowed me to build my enthusiasm and then go from there. But he also knew that I needed to achieve certain goals, and I was achieving those goals, even the early stages, and look how you're going to achieve those goals. So that was great. That was a true mentorship role. It was a one-on-one mentorship role. But if it was just knowledge, if he wrote a book, or the book I wrote, right, that guidebook I wrote, that was not really mentoring. That was just factual knowledge. I did give a few things in there about what I did, what I didn't do, and those kind of things, but it was guide book, not mentoring book. So can a book be a mentor? Well, in the case of this one, it actually did. And I thought they really took a very interesting approach to the whole thing. Because what they did is they wrote out the questions. Actually, they wrote out the answers, but not the questions. They wrote out the answers that were given in all the different one-on-one conversations and all the different mentoring roles, guiding roles, coaching roles that took place. And they put that into the book, but more as like a book form rather than a Q&A form. Obviously, it was a book. They didn't do it as a Q&A. It wasn't like question 1, answer, question 2, answer, question 3, answer. It was written in a way that was, or it was wrote in a way. I actually have not read the whole thing. I only got through the first chapter, but not even really. It's part of the introduction. I just got fascinated with that question. Is a book a good book to read? Can a book be a mentor? Just kind of lost on that one. But it was written in a manner where it does flow different aspects of it. It's not going to flow storyline flow because all these different chapters, all these different scenarios are unique in and of itself. So it's not going to flow like a story would flow, but it is going to be presenting thoughts on questions, and maybe really where the mentorship comes in, where it really becomes a personal aspect of you taking away from this, or me taking away from this book, what I see or what I want or what I'm able to absorb is how I'm looking at the response and what my question really would be. So I really think that's fascinating. So here's my thought to you. A couple of things. 1, 3 things we'll go, and we got 2 more minutes to go over here. 3 things. 1, mentor. Does a mentor have to be a person? The answer to that is no, it does not have to be a one-on-one conversation. But if it is, understand where that person is coming from. Most important. A speaker. If you're going to go to a presentation someplace, you know what? Go to that with the understanding of, does that speaker, and you're looking to learn and be mentored at the thing, does that speaker know who the audience is? Has that speaker put any effort into learning what the audience is? Has that speaker going to be just sharing knowledge, or will that speaker be sharing thoughts and ideas that are going to give you something to think about, something that you could do something with? Look, we've all been to so many networking events, and a speaker gets up there and they talk about how brilliant they are. Okay, all good, fantastic. What's the takeaway? If the speaker gets up there and talks about how their industry, their knowledge, whatever can affect you and what you should think about, it's a bit more of a mentoring role. Now, granted, if somebody's going up there speaking for 5 to 10 minutes, good luck. All you're doing there, that's just an elongated elevator pitch. That's just a reason. They're just really giving you a tidbit and something that piques your interest. You can give them a call, which is great. That's 10 minutes. Put it at that book. So if you're going to write a book, you're going to read a book, but if you're going to write a book, think about how you can continually pique the interest, how you can continually write to a specific audience. You should know who your audience is expected to be in that one, but write it in a manner that's not just giving them concrete information, but giving them thoughts and ideas and presenting it in a manner that's going to get them to think, to get them to consider how that information affects them. Because that, I think, will be a longer lasting book in their mind rather than just on a bookshelf someplace. And if you're writing that book in order to grow your business, build your brand, and all the rest of that kind of stuff, well, the more you give them to think about, the more apt they're going to remember you, they're going to trust you, and they're going to get in contact with you. And that is my thoughts on how to be mentored. And can you be mentored by a book? Absolutely. And can you write a book that's going to help people be mentored by you? Absolutely. Pay attention to your audience all the time. You should be very focused on your audience when you speak well and when you speak often, and absolutely how you live inspired. Have a great day, my friends. Have a great weekend. It's Friday. There we go. Time for a little music. Bam.